So, hello and welcome to today's webinar. This is the second in our five-part Serving on Groups that Make Decisions fall webinar series. This is section 3, processes that groups use. And my name is Jan Sterrick, and I'm the actual founder and former executive director, CEO of Wisconsin Facets, now retired, yippee. I'm also the director of Sterrick Consulting Services now, where I work with nonprofit agencies to provide training for boards of directors and others, and then interim agency management and other services. So I'm also the parent of 2 adult sons, my oldest of which has autism. That's how I got into all of this to begin with. So we covered sections 1 and 2 in the first webinar that was a couple weeks ago, and this just so you know, the recording is available if you want it, if you missed that, and just contact again Wisconsin Facets at that number, and you can you can get the recording and the handouts. The handouts for today include a copy of all the slides that I'm going to be using, so certainly you don't have to, you can download them or whatever you want with them. So here's the agenda for today's webinar. We're going to do a quick overview of the Serving on Groups Guidebook resource. Today we're going to cover, as I said, section 3. We're going to look at a guiding principles framework that effective groups use in their process of shared decision making. And then we're going to cover the 6 common processes that effective groups use in their work. And finally, we'll end today with some additional resources. And I just want to do a very quick poll of you guys, and you can just indicate if you've never served on a decision-making group, if you served on one, or if you're thinking about joining one, or if you're on one now. If you're on one now, you can write the name of it if you want in the chat box. And otherwise, I'll just wait for you guys to answer that real quick. Okay. All right, it looks like almost everybody voted, and I'm going to close it and then share it out with you. And it looks like pretty much 100% of you said that you have already served on a decision-making group. So that's cool. You guys are all pretty experienced then, so you'll be able to take the information today and apply it to other, to your group work. So let me just change this real quick. Okay, so first, for those of you who weren't with us for section 1 and 2 2 weeks ago, I just want to briefly tell you about Serving on Groups. It was developed, the resource was developed in response to a need that was identified. Wisconsin Facets found that it really isn't enough just to invite parents to join decision-making groups wherever they are, but that the parents may need empowerment and information and support in order to be more effective participants in groups. So we developed the Serving on Groups Guidebook with funding from the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction and the U.S. Department of Ed Office of Special Education Programs. So you're going to hear me refer to the resource as the Guidebook for short. And just to let you know that the review of this guidebook was done by a really large group of stakeholders from across Wisconsin that included parents, educators, state agencies, just really, a hugely diverse group of folks that had input on it. So it's a great introduction for some, it's a welcome refreshing for others, and a resource for all, so that everybody can come to the table ready to serve. And it applies to really all types of decision-making groups, not just related to education, and really not just in Wisconsin, but it can be applied nationally and to just all kinds of groups. The guidebook and many related resources, you can download them for free from the Serving on Groups website. The link is on the screen. And I just want to give a big shout out to the online learning platform for the modules that's on this Serving on Group website. Wisconsin Facets just kind of updated that, and it's really pretty cool. I mean, you can just click on modules at the top of the web page of the Serving on Groups website to access all of the modules. You can get them 24/7 and just go through them at your own pace. Go back and review any time. You can, go through it with a group that you're on so that, everybody can see the same thing. Wisconsin Facets, I mean, I think this is just really excellent website, and just so be sure to check it out. lots of resources, even more than what we're sharing today, are on that site. And you can also get a hard copy of that guidebook. You can order them on that site. And I think that Wisconsin Facet sent some of those guidebooks out for people who registered. I'm not 100% sure, but that was like the rumor. So I'm not quite sure that everybody got one. But if you didn't, you can just go online and download it too. So before we get into the 6 common processes that groups use, I just wanted to share with you the guiding principles that are thought to contribute to the process of shared decision making. So these guiding principles are shared vision, which means groups need to find common ground. Otherwise, each member may be working towards different goals. Representation means that there has to be consideration for the needs and perspective of everybody that's affected. Otherwise, the group is making decisions for others without hearing their concerns and questions and opinions. So, if you did that, you might get some backlash and lack of buy-in, or your goals might not be reached because you didn't have everybody involved when making a decision. So in the disability world, we often use the phrase "nothing about us without us," and that really applies here to shared decision making. And the next is the principle of equal partners, meaning that each member must be treated equally, allowed to share their opinions, have access to all of the same information, and have their needs met in order to participate. Otherwise, if some group members don't feel like true participants, they might not choose to participate, and you're going to lose that very important voice. I mean, they may still be there in the chair, but they may not feel comfortable talking, or they may not come at all. The next principle is collaboration, and that means there's opportunities to work together within the group. Otherwise, everybody's working alone in their own little bubble, and again, you won't have that group unity and buy-in with all of the objectives of the group. Then there's shared responsibility, and that means that everybody agrees to do their part. So, for example, like if one person or a small group does it all, there's less feeling of ownership by the other members. So what happens when maybe that one person or the small group leaves the group? Well, then all the work that they were responsible for is kind of just left behind, and others don't know how to do it, or there's no one to lead, the charge in that particular area. Information sharing means staying up to date on all of the data, the information, and the news about an issue that you're working on. Otherwise, a gap is going to arise within the group, and not all of the members will be able to make well-informed decisions. This means not only staying up to date yourself on particular issues that you're working on with your group, but also sharing that information with others so that their decision is just as informed as yours would be. And then finally, obviously the last principle is producing results. So group needs to check their progress and adjust what they're doing if they're not making progress. So otherwise, nothing's accomplished. So what's the point of convening your group if you're not meeting your goals? And remember, when you look at these 7 principles, remember that even if one of these principles is missing, the group outcomes are going to be impacted negatively, and the shared decision making is going to be compromised. You really won't have shared decision making. So keep these in mind, very important. So the idea of guiding principles can easily be applied, for example, to different types of decision-making groups. So here's one that many of us are familiar with, which is applying it to like an IEP meeting. So the first principle is shared vision. So that would be like, in this case, for this example, everybody on the IEP team would want the child to be healthy, happy, and successful. And then representation, oopsie, where did that go? Okay, we don't want that. Okay, next one is representation. So the team would include anybody working with the child or representing the child's best interest. So they should all be present at the meeting or have found some way to get their information and concerns shared at the meeting. And obviously, there are certain required IEP team members, and then there's, optional IEP team members. But you want to make sure everybody's there and is working to represent the child's best interest. Then the next principle was equal partners. So everybody on the IEP team should have an opportunity to express their ideas and their concerns and their questions, and then have their information listened to and valued by other team members. The next principle is collaboration, meaning that the entire IEP team works together to come up with a plan for the child. Next is shared responsibility, which means everybody on the IEP team does their part to support the child's learning at school, at home, and in the community. So the group isn't just creating the IEP team together, the IEP document together, but also implementing and taking responsibility for parts of the plan together. Then information sharing. So this means the same information is given to all team members so that they're able to make a well-informed decision. Any evaluation, academic, or behavior data or medical information, reports of how things are going at home, all of that is important information to share with the whole group. And finally, the principle of producing results. So ideally, obviously, the child makes progress. That would be the team's evidence that the plan is working and producing the desired results. And remember, if one of these principles is missing, then it's not true shared decision making, and the child's progress may suffer as a result. So I'm going to do another poll here. And so if you've been involved in a shared decision making group, like say, let's use the IEP team meeting or any group really, were any of these guiding principles missing for you? I'll let you answer that now. Okay, I think almost everybody voted. All right, so I'm going to, a couple more. All right, so it looks like across the board, somebody was missing, one of each of these. Shared vision, that's interesting that's 50% of all of you. And it's, it just goes to show that you have to really be clear with everybody about, what the vision is, in this case, for an IEP of the child, but for any group, the shared vision has to be really clear to all. And then equal partners, definitely an issue. So thanks for answering that. Okay, here, I'll hide that out. Okay, so just a couple of helpful reminders for working on a group that uses guiding principles for shared decision making is to start with the end in mind. So in other words, you want to focus on the outcomes and then work toward positive results. If the results aren't positive or not what the group hoped to have accomplished, then the group really needs to go back to the processes that they're using and make adjustments until they have a plan that is producing positive results. If your group is achieving what it set out to achieve, then you want to celebrate and publicize that success. You want to make sure that everybody on the team who has been part of the work, is acknowledged, and that you're celebrating your outcome. So here we're going to start talking about some of the processes that are used by groups that are effective in making good decisions. So 6 common processes are information gathering, goal setting, planning, collaboration, evaluation, and reaching agreement. We'll go through each one of these in detail. So the first one is information gathering, and it's important for groups to gather and use accurate data. So the information this information is called sometimes data, and it can come in many forms. Like it could come in like numbers and facts and perspectives and ideas and stories. It can be collected in many ways. So the first step is to find out what information does your group need and to go out and collect it. And we're going to actually talk more about data in section 6 of webinars, and I think that one comes up on October 26th. So don't miss that one, because that one is a really good one about data. Data sounds really boring, and this one, this really the section 6 one helps it become a little bit more palatable. Another way of information gathering is brainstorming, and this is a strategy that is used when groups want to generate and collect lots of ideas. So when you do brainstorming, everybody just throws out all of their ideas, and everybody really should just listen carefully to all the ideas and opinions without judgment. I mean, you just make a huge list, like whether it's on a whiteboard or, a flip chart or something. You just throw out all these ideas, and then sort out from the list. Once you've got it all, brainstormed, then you sort out from the list which ones the group, which ideas the group thinks are best, and which ones should be used going forward. Another way to gather information is to use a focus group. And this is a group of participants who are asked questions and options and then share their perspectives or stories, like gathering families from a school or members of a community together. When we put together at Wisconsin Facets, when we would put together a grant proposal, oftentimes we would bring, like say if we were doing a grant about youth, and we would bring together an actual group of youth with disabilities to ask them questions and figure out what they needed before we would write the grant. So during this information gathering steps, you can identify issues that need to be addressed as part of the group's work. And priority really has to be given to issues that are the most important or that may take the most time to accomplish. The bottom line, no matter how you gather your information, is that it's critical to have up-to-date, accurate information, and that all of the information that you need, that you have all of the information that you need before the group makes a decision. So I think, a couple of things you can think about is how do you personally gather information before making decisions, and also how do you and your group determine what issues or tasks are the most important. I mean, you should be aware of how this happens. So just, give it some thought. So the next process is to set goals. And a goal is what a group wants to see happen, and it needs to be stated up front so that the group knows what they're working towards. I mean, when you look back at what I just realized, did I share this out and close it? I don't think I did. Shoot. Okay, we'll get rid of that. Okay, so, sorry, I got distracted. Okay, so what I was going to say is, when you look back at that poll that we just did, 50% of you said you didn't have a shared vision. And here's where, setting goals is where you're setting the vision, setting the goal of what everybody wants to see happen. You can have goals that are both short-term and long-term. Once you've developed your priorities, you can set these goals. And hopefully this is done, during the information gathering stage. And reviewing the group's mission and vision statements are helpful guides during this goal setting process. Ineffective groups often lack clear goals, or they fail to communicate the group's goals to everybody that's a member of the group. And I just mentioned vision statements and mission statements, and some people confuse these two. It took me a while to figure out which was which, but I finally got it. So a vision statement describes the changes the group wants to see happen in the future as a result of their actions. So this is like the desired end state for your group's work. An example would be like the sentence, a community where people of all ages are treated with respect and dignity and are valued for their contributions. Okay, so that's a vision statement. Now, a mission statement provides the direction and sets the goals, actions, and decision-making processes for how to get there. So this is kind of like why you exist. And so example of this would be linking older adults within a caring community. So in the resources slide at the end of this webinar, we have included the links for 2 short videos that are about writing vision and mission statements. and I think the other thing that's really important is to use SMART goals. And these are goals that are written to help the group accomplish what they set out to do. One of the resources also at the end is a link to a short video about SMART goals. And SMART, as you can see on the slide, it's actually an acronym. So SMART goals are described as specific. So part of your goal would say, what exactly are you going to do? Like say, we are going to get better. Would it be specific enough? Measurable. So how are you going to do it? How will you show that you've done it? So we could say we are going to increase our sales by 50%, or you could say we're going to reach 100 more consumers, or you could say we're going to improve our evaluation scores by 10%. So something very concrete and measurable should be part of your goal. And then attainable. This really means, can you commit to doing it? If you're currently serving, say, 100 people a year, you might want to start serving, as your goal, 300 before you aim at serving 10,000. So realistic means, kind of, is it doable? Are you going to increase your outreach by 1,000 times in 1 year? Probably not. But set a goal that you can actually reach. And then timely. What's your time frame for doing this? Like if you say we're going to accomplish something in the next 20 years, it doesn't really give a lot of focus, and it's hard to action plan around 20 years. But setting a goal that's maybe 6 months or a year out with benchmarks or little shorter goals along the way, that really helps make a very time-bound, realistic goal. So for example, if you're part of an IEP team, your group might start using SMART goals for goal setting when you're writing an IEP for disability, kids with disabilities. You have a handout that's called Creating Vision and Mission Statements, and you could use this information to work on developing a mission and vision statement with a group you serve on. I mean, this is really important. I can remember doing a like a retreat with when I was on the Autism Society of America Board of Directors, and we were supposed to set a vision and a mission statement. And honest to goodness, it took us like a whole day to agree on what our vision statement was, and then another whole day to agree on the mission statement. So these are like really important. We had a board that was 16 people, and to get those 16 people to really agree on what those two were, the mission and vision statement, was pretty much of a challenge. But yet, once we got those done, it really outlined what the whole group wanted to see happen, which was pretty cool. Okay, so I've got another poll for you. You just have to let me know whether you think this is a mission or a vision statement. So an Asia and Pacific region free of poverty, which one do you think that is, vision or mission statement? Okay, most of you are voting. Let's see. Just going to leave it open a minute. All right, most of you voted, so I'm going to close that up, share it out, and most of you said vision statement, which is what it is. The top of the mountain is the region free of poverty, and the end game is that, this is what the end game the group envisions for the future. So I'll hide that. I'm going to do one more, which is this one. I'll launch that one out. And which do you think this is, a mission or a vision statement? This is promoting child health and development through a comprehensive family and community initiative. Okay, almost everybody has voted. All right, I'm going to close that out and share it out with you. And yep, everybody, most people thought it was a mission statement, and that's correct because it has a ing verb like promoting, and this is what we're going to do to get to us from where we are now to the mountaintop goal in our vision statement. So I'll hide that out. Thanks. Okay. I hope this helps you think about your group's own mission and vision statements. And if you're not in a group that has these guiding statements, maybe you can think about suggesting that the group work together to develop them. So the third process is planning. And planning, when you do planning, a plan begins to form when the group agrees on the first steps, agrees on the goals, and agrees on when they're going to do it, in what order, and what order they're going to do it, and who's going to do it, and what resources they're going to need to use for their group. And sometimes this plan is called an action plan. You might have heard that. A tool that can be really effective in helping you when you're trying to create your plan is something called a logic model. And you can also use schedules or strategy charts as well. Now, logic models are diagrams that illustrate how a group's activity connects to its goals and its outcome. And more information is on the next couple of slides. Schedules are, you can also call them timelines, and that provides the group with assignments to accomplish within certain deadlines. So this one is an example of logic model. And while I'm talking, if you want to go ahead and put in the chat box or the question box, wherever it's convenient, if a group that you're part of uses a logic model as part of your regular communication of their action plan. So just let me know if you're already using one. But here's an example of a logic model. It's for a family camping vacation. So the orange items on the left are the inputs. These are things that you're going to need to make this goal, this trip happen. So for a family vacation, you need the family members, you need a budget, you need a car, and you need camping equipment. And then the green boxes are the outputs. So these are the things that have to be done in order to accomplish your goal. So you have to drive to the state park, you got to set up your camp, you got to cook, play, talk, laugh, hike. And then the hot pink item at the right is the outcome of the family vacation that you're trying to reach. So it will be that family members learn about each other, have a good time, and that the family bonds together. Now, if it was my son who forgot the tent stakes and we didn't have tent stakes to put our tent up and we got rained on, probably not as great time as we could have had we did the very first one on the left and had the camping equipment all in order. So you can see if you're missing one piece, you don't get to the end. So this is a very basic model to give you the idea of how to develop a logic model: inputs, outputs, and outcome. So here's another example of a logic model, and this one looks more like what we would see in our professional settings of decision-making groups. And it has the same categories as the last one of inputs, outputs, and outcomes, and there's some other areas too. So you're going to see the outputs in green are broken out into activities and participation, and the outcomes, the pink and orange, have subcategories. They have short-term, medium-term, and long-term outcomes. And the model starts out with the situation, which is the darker blue arrow on the far left. So what is the situation that the group is going into? And then also on the left, the lighter blue are the group's priorities. So in the blue boxes near the bottom are assumptions and external factors that are going to impact decision making. So assumptions are kind of a place to write what things are assumed about the group, such as you're going to have enough time to implement the change, or you're going to have the money to do it. And then external factors might be, say the group is working on a school decision and the law changes, the state law or the federal law changes halfway into the work. Well, you're going to need to change the course of action. So there, those things do impact how this logic model works. And at the bottom in yellow, going across the whole plan, is evaluation. And the group really would be evaluating through the whole process, not just get to the end and then evaluate. You kind of have to, evaluate as you go along how you're doing, make changes if needed, decides on next steps as you go along. So you have a one-page handout that's a logic model example on one side, and it has a template for a logic model on the other side. And the template is cool. It's a great one to use to develop a logic model for your group. And then there's also an example on your handout about going to the doctor with a sick child. When Wisconsin Facets has to write like a grant application for its parent training center, The federal U.S. Department of Ed requires a logic model to outline how that grant is going to work. So you have to have, all the inputs and then the outputs, the outcomes of what the training is going to do, what information referral, what the website, all that stuff. So all of these individual things have to be worked on, and like the outcomes actually for facets for the grant, they have maybe 85% of the people are going to get good information on whatever. So, there's actual measurable, very measurable outcomes that have to be met. So that's one of the reasons why we always ask you to do evaluations at the end of our webinars, because the logic model outcomes have to measure those to make sure that we're getting the information that you guys need. So collaboration is a fourth process, and collaboration is when members of a group voluntarily bring their knowledge and experience together to work towards a common goal. And there's several ways to help encourage collaboration amongst your group members if it's not already happening. One way is to set expectations that everybody can agree on, and that helps increase cooperation in a positive working environment. For example, if you're on a board of directors or a group and people aren't reading the materials ahead of time, then one of the expectations is that everybody reads the materials and comes prepared to the meeting. And then if people show up unprepared, the group leader can refer them back to the list of expectations, and you can remind them that the group decided that it was necessary to make the group function well and encourage a positive work environment. Another tool for collaboration is to encourage ongoing communication and networking. So, for example, if you're part of a group that just meets a couple times a year, like some boards just meet 4 times a year, it's really cool to find a way to stay in touch in between times and update each other with information. Maybe email with smaller committee meetings, or Zoom, or a closed Facebook group, maybe like Workplace, to make sure that the work of the group is ongoing. And another strategy for collaboration is to have a neutral facilitator to help with the group dynamics, especially if the members of the group have not worked together before, or if there's already some barriers to the group working together effectively. This is just a person who is neutral and doesn't have a strong opinion about the groups one way or the other. And the person is there to just make sure that the meetings run smoothly and stay focused on the outcomes. An example that I could share is that when IDEA was reauthorized the last time, Wisconsin had to change state law to conform with the federal law. So I was part of a state leadership group whose job it was to make recommendations for changing the state law. And this was a tough crowd. It was a group that started off with very diverse opinions. So the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction brought in a mediator, a neutral person who facilitated the work of the group. And this was very effective, and it made the work, our group so much easier and much more collaborative than it would have been without the facilitator. So another strategy for collaboration is making sure that there's meaningful activities for all members. So if somebody is a part of a group and they say they love planning events, for example, and then they don't even get included on the fundraising planning committee, it's certainly not using their talents to their best, to the best of their abilities, and it's a barrier to collaboration. So try to make sure that you get to know the people in your group, knowing where their skills and talents lie, what's important to each one of them, and what is going to bring out their passion and their commitment to collaboration, and use them where they are best suited. And then finally, another tool is to offer focused training and technical assistance to group members. So, if somebody doesn't understand budgets or financial reports, and you think the person isn't going to make good decisions because they don't really understand the information, rather than just ignoring them or excluding them from collaboration, offer some training to them about budgets and financial reports so that they can improve their understanding and better collaborate with the group. You could maybe meet with them ahead of the meeting and go over the budget and, explain it to them in more detail so that when they actually maybe have to take a vote on it, they know what they're voting on. So it's really important to know your members. A proverb that we like to share related to the importance of collaboration is this wonderful African proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I would say one of my experiences was when we were working on the Wisconsin seclusion restraint law for kids with disabilities. And we first tried, just a bunch of us parents got together with parents and advocates to write and pass a state law related to seclusion restraint. No luck whatsoever. We then, maybe 10 years later, we tried again and we expanded our group to include all stakeholders. So we had parents, school administrators, teachers, school board people, students, attorneys, special ed administrators. Once our group included everybody, we were able to really collaborate to get everybody's ideas, to give everybody a voice, and we actually drafted a state law and proposed it together to the state legislators, and it passed unopposed. So, if we would have just done it ourselves, no go. If we got everybody together, it worked well. And so looking back on some of the tools that we discussed for meaningful collaboration, it really depends on individual members of the group being raised up, increasing their skills and capacity and their leadership in order for the whole group to move forward together. So again, the helpful tools were agreed upon expectations, ongoing communication and networking, a neutral facilitator, meaningful activities, and then focused training and technical assistance. So what are some of the benefits of collaboration? Well, okay, so when a collaborative process is used, there's going to be more involvement by all the members. Members are going to feel more part of the work and have ownership in the results. Better relationships, greater commitment. Members are going to be more committed because they help design the process and they help choose the outcomes. Better communication between members of the group because everybody's working together for this common goal. The fifth process for effective decision-making group is evaluation. And after a group has begun collaborating and working together for a while, the members will need to revisit their plan to see if it's resulting in what they hope for. So it may be necessary for the group to collect more information. It might be necessary to change course and do this differently. So evaluation is when the new information is compared to information you already know. And there's two kinds of information to discuss in the decision-making process. One of these terms is formative evaluation, and the other is summative evaluation. And they sound like sort of confusing terms, so just let me make sure that you know what the difference is and understand it. So a formative evaluation is when the information is reviewed, usually in-house or with a small test group during the planning process, so that the plan could be tweaked if needed. It's also known as to monitor progress or progress monitoring. So, I was talking before about the evaluations that Wisconsin Facets does after all of its workshops. That's really progress monitoring. So during a grant year, if a workshop isn't getting good evaluations, we can still make some changes and we could add or delete things. A summative evaluation is done at the end of the plan to look at what was accomplished. And this is also known as to measure the final results. So Wisconsin Facets, when we turn in our grant report at the end of the year, we add up all the results together and we measure, the summative evaluation of those results of our, evaluations of our workshops. So a simple way of looking at this also could be like when the cook tastes the soup, when the cook is making the soup. That's called formative evaluation. You can still change it. You could add ingredients. You could make it warmer or whatever. When the guests taste the soup, that's the summative evaluation. So everything's done at this point, and we're evaluating how we did. But you can't go back and change what already has been done. So those two, it's important with evaluation for a group to include in your planning to use formative evaluation so that you have time to make changes before you get to the point where there's not much chance to make changes to what's already been done. So in your group, a decision-making group, you're going to include both types of evaluation, and formative, just remember, is really important to include, not just summative. So the sixth and final process is to have an agreed-upon process or way of how the group is going to reach agreement. sometimes one of the most difficult things for groups is reaching agreement on an issue. So one way groups choose to do this is just by voting, and this is really the most formal way to reach agreement. Um, you may hear of, you might have already heard of it, but you may also hear in a group that you're going to be on, Robert's Rules of Order. And that's a very specific tool that provides structure to the voting process, and it requires a majority of members of a group to vote yes, like in favor of, whatever the group is working on. So somebody has to make a motion to the group, which is asking them to make a decision on a certain thing. Somebody else has to second the motion, and then there's an opportunity for people to discuss the motion. And then everybody is asked to vote. So you can either vote yes or no, or you can abstain. And abstain just means that you don't feel like you can vote either yes or no for whatever reason. I mean, it could be that you have a conflict of interest. It could be that you don't understand all the information or whatever, but or you just simply don't want to vote. And then the motion will pass if a majority of the members voted yes. So a majority is 51%. So it's half of the group plus one. So if you have, 16 members of the group, for example, you'd need 9 of them to vote yes in order for the motion to pass. Groups that use Robert's Rules of Order often keep very detailed meeting minutes documenting the decision-making process. Like they would write down in the minutes what exactly the motion was, who made the motion, who seconded the motion, and then what the vote was. They would say like 14 yes, 2 no, and 0 abstentions. That's the way that they should put it in the minutes. And then another important feature of Robert's Rules is that there has to be what's called a quorum present in order to vote. And a quorum means that an agreed upon number of members have to be there in order for a vote to take place. So this number is set by the group. It could be a majority, like 50% plus one, or it could be a higher number. It just depends on the group. So for example, if you had 16 people in your group and just 5 of them showed up and you required 50, a majority, you wouldn't be able to make, proceed with your meeting to vote on, I mean, you could have a meeting, but you couldn't vote or make decisions during that meeting. So page 20 in your section 3 handout for today, it has some important rules from Robert's Rules of Order. And I also have, in the end, under resources, there's a reference to Robert's Rules of Order. And I know when I was on the Wisconsin State Superintendent's Advisory Council, the parliamentary procedure that they used was Robert's Rules of Order. So it was very specific in terms of voting and minutes and so forth. So it was a good idea to be very familiar with Robert's Rules. Another way groups can create agreement is through what's called consensus. And consensus is when the whole group comes to a mutual agreement. So this wouldn't be, it would not be having like 11 yeses, 5 noes, and 7 abstentions, and then pass it with a majority in favor. With consensus, you have to have the whole group come together on one decision. So consensus really involves true compromise. I mean, it can be a complicated, lengthy process, but it can also be very rewarding because everybody has put something, important to them into that compromise, and hopefully everybody's going to be happier with the results. Consensus doesn't necessarily mean that everybody got exactly the outcome they wanted. Instead, that an outcome was reached that is acceptable to everybody. A consensus really does have one advantage. It has the potential to strengthen group relationships, and the key is compromise. Sometimes by combining everybody's proposals, we can achieve a better overall position that has, more support than what we would have accomplished individually. Some groups use both types of reaching agreement or parts of both. So it's important when you're joining a group really to ask how the group is going to make decisions and how they're going to reach agreement. When we were working on the IDEA law restructuring for the state, and I said this was a challenging group. I mean, we had all of these different people on it, and school board members and attorneys and teachers union and parents and school administrators to get the final law passed for the state. We all really compromised. And we had a consensus. Everybody compromised. We finally, came all to consensus. And I know on our parent list, we had 22 things that we wanted to make sure got into the state law that, that were, that we were wanting to make change. And I think we ended up getting maybe 16 of those things. People had, the other folks had a list as well. So, but we ended up reaching consensus on as many as we possibly could. So I have another poll for you, and this is what is true about reaching agreement by consensus. If you could just weigh in on that. Okay. Just waiting till everybody responds to that one. I think this is a multiple choice. Hopefully I made it multiple choice. If I didn't, sorry about that. Okay. More people are voting. And I'll wait just a couple more seconds. All right, I'm going to share this out now. And you can see how the vote went. Actually, every one of these really is a, true about reaching agreement by consensus, except the last one. So the last one, which is taking a vote, would be a no. So I'm going to hide that. All right. So let me see. Where am I? Reaching agreement. I got that. So reaching agreement, that was the sixth process that groups use. And even if the group doesn't have all six of these processes, your group could have its own individual processes to help the group with decision making. They just have to know what it is. So pretty much all of these processes are really just a plan for staying organized, taking actions, and planning for the next step. So here are some things that you can personally do yourself to be more effective in the group. Start by organizing your information. So read all the materials that you get related to your group, and that means really read them. Do research. I mean, you get the materials, and then if there's not enough information in there, or if you think you can add something, do some research. Go online, get some more data, blah, blah. Talk to other people and organize all of the information in a way that you can find and easily refer to when you need to. Some people, organize it all into a folder on your laptop. Some people organize it all, print in a 3-ring binder. So just make sure that you're organized and you have your information for that meeting. Make sure that you keep in mind the group's goals so that your decisions are headed towards reaching those outcomes. Sometimes, at the top of an agenda for a meeting, you might have the goal up there so that you can, keep your focus on that goal. And if you, veer off into the weeds, you've still got that goal in mind. Make a list of priorities so that what's the most important thing you think the group needs to accomplish, and what are some of the things that could take a back seat to get to when the group has time. Keep track of where others stand on decisions. If you're in a large group and you know that there's some people in the group that have a strong opinion on one side of the issue and there's others who feel opposite, keep track of those feelings and opinions. And when you share your proposal, sometimes you can frame it in a way that you can appeal to the feelings of both sides, and have yours progress. You can ask the group leader to explain the roles of the members. So if you don't understand exactly what your role is on the group versus somebody else, or you just want to get to understand what roles are available to you. So, ask about that. Make sure to take notes. Even if somebody else in your group is taking meeting minutes like formal minutes often don't include all the discussion and the points of view that occurred. So, that stuff might be useful to you later. So if you take your own notes, they really might be helpful to you later to go back and look at. And finally, write down the results of your activities. If you tried doing something in a different way, so that you can go back later and revisit what you did, to really reach a great outcome. So here's a bunch of resources that might be helpful for your groups. The yellow highlighted ones are the video resources that I mentioned on those earlier slides that was about vision and mission statements. There's also some good resources here for mission and vision statements and logic models. I love the logic model one, very cool. The conducting focus group video is good. I mean, these are all great resources. So don't just skip over them. Go back and really take a look at them because they should be helpful for your group. And like the video coupled with about the vision and mission statement coupled with your handout could be really useful for your group if you haven't got those already or if you want to refine them. And then this one has some more resources. I love the Robert's Rules of Order one. It's down near the bottom. Um, that's their official website. I mean, there's some really good books of Robert's Rules of Order. I used to take my little pocket, paperback of Robert's Rules of Order to meetings. And sometimes, if you have a very formal meeting that's making, decisions in a super formal way, having those rules you can play around with how you get to a meeting. Like if it's a really sort of adversarial situation and you can make a motion, you can lay a motion on a table, the person that voted positively can bring the motion back up again. I mean, there's a lot of things that are little unique tweaks for Robert's Rules of Order if you're in that kind of situation, and it really is helpful to have those little cheat sheets and stuff for Robert's Rules available to you if you have that kind of a group. And again, the SMART goals video, very helpful for, like if you're doing IEP meetings or something. And leading by convening, which is about in the middle of that slide, this is actually a really awesome bunch of resources. And there are 5 online learning modules on the website, and they're, when you're going to be convening a group and working with groups, these modules are really helpful. They were developed by the IDEA partnership and then the National Center on Systemic Improvement, which were federally funded group. And Facets was one of the stakeholders in the development of these materials. So I urge you to take going through those modules. Each module is like maybe a half hour, and there's a bunch of handouts that are really helpful. So I urge you to go over to that website and take a look at it. So where do you go from here? If you're interested in learning about personal skills and knowledge of, roles for serving on groups, that was in like section 1 and 2 that we already covered, and it's also in section 6, 7, 8. So the things that are highlighted in yellow. If you're more interested in group skills, you're going to find this kind of information in section 2 and 3 that we already covered, and then coming up in section 4, 5, and 6. Be sure to register for the next one in this series, which is going to be section 4 and 5. And then I'm just going to finish up with a couple of real quickie questions. So here's the first one, and this is just, do you think that you might do you think this information has been relevant for you and for the work that you're doing? Okay. All right. Okay, I'm going to close that, share that out, and then, okay, so that's good. And then the last one is, do you think this workshop was high quality? I'm just going to launch that out. You can answer. I won't share that publicly, so you can just say whatever you want for that one. Okay. All right, I'm going to close that one. All right. And then finally, I just wanted to give you guys a heads up plug for this upcoming 4-part workshop series. These workshops are going to dive deeper into the Serving on Groups guidebook to make this resource even more relative for your advocacy journey. And this free series is sponsored by the Wisconsin Facets Parent Center and WISPE, which is the Wisconsin Statewide Parent Educator Initiative in Wisconsin. And the series is going to take place on 4 Wednesdays in a row starting on October 12th. And so each session is going to be from 6 to 8 p.m. via Zoom. And we hope that you can commit to attending all 4 sessions in the series if you and there's still time to register for it if you would like. So I think, I have the registration link on there. So if you have a copy of the handouts, you'll have the copy of the registration link. And then I just want to thank you again for joining us. Your feedback is super important. So, here's the link for the evaluation, and if you have a iPhone, you can do the QR app and do it on there. Just click on the picture, and that'll take you to the evaluation. The link also, as I said, is going to be sent to you after the webinar. And plus, for some reason, it showed up 3 times in the chat box. So it's like, okay, a little overkill, but it's there. So words to remember: leaders aren't born. They rise out of a person's passion for how they want the world to be. That's kind of the buzzword for the Serving on Groups series. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I hope to see you for the next one on October 20th, and I hope you have a great rest of the day. Take care, and we'll see you all soon, hopefully.